Hi. I'm going to talk about automate yourself. So if that's not what you're here to hear, you should maybe go someplace else. Could we maybe close the doors at the back if somebody... Thanks. So hi, I'm John.
Hi, John.
On the internet, I use my superhero name, GeneHack. This is Brock's hat. You should say hi to Brock. Brock's a cool guy. So this is a tool about, or a talk about personal productivity, and I thought I would talk a little bit about myself so that you can understand why I have so much interest in personal productivity. So I have 2 kids, 2 daughters. I have a wife. She's a long-suffering Yapsy widow, so she's at home taking care of my 2 daughters. I have a job. I work for Infinity Interactive. I'm a tech lead for them. And I have a lot of hobbies. I maintain a couple of Perl modules, GitWrapper, a couple more I'm going to talk about here on the talk. I like to write some Perl code. I like to read, like to go running, ride my bike. So I have a lot of hobbies. I have a lot of balls in the air at any given time. So I need to automate as much stupid stuff as I can, right? I need to automate myself. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and coming up with tools that let me do silly things faster so that I have more time for my hobbies. I just want to say this is the only picture in the talk that I didn't take myself. So my guiding principle in setting up all of this stuff is I'm not that bright, particularly when I'm in the middle of doing something else or in one of them, my hobbies. So I don't want to have to think about stuff. Variety may be the spice of life, but uniformity is really good. Okay, so really what I work in a lot of different environments. I have Unix servers that I work on. I have a couple of different Macs that I use frequently. I don't want to have to think about which system I'm logged into or what box I'm using. I just want everything to work the same all the time. The main way that you can do this is by configuring your shell properly. So who puts their shell configs in Git? That's like half the audience. That's cool. Everybody else, put them in Git. Just have a single shell config, right? You should not have a shell config for your Macs and a shell config for the Linux. Just have one. All the shells have these conditional operator things that let you say if this thing is here, do it this way, otherwise do it that way. Don't conditionalize on the host names of the boxes because those will change and then stuff will break and then you get diverted from what you're trying to do into trying to figure out why your shell doesn't work right anymore, and then it's 2 hours later. Check capabilities. So you can look at things like what type of operating system it is, or look at termcap files, although that's kind of a creeping horror. When you do put stuff in your shell config that you found someplace else, include a link to why you put it in there. I mean, your shell config is code. Just like you would put a comment in code, put a comment in your shell config explaining what you're trying to do with this line of cryptic crap that you're going to be looking at 6 months later, trying to decide whether or not you can delete it or whether that's going to completely screw up your entire world. So I'm going to talk about an app I wrote that I didn't write, Ingi wrote. Ingi wrote a version of this that he talked about in PPW in 2010 called App All YCIBTU, which I don't know how to pronounce, and it stands for All Your Code Is Belong to Us. It's basically a way to manage your Git repositories in a batch fashion. So I like the idea, but I didn't like some of the design choices he had made, and I really hated the name. So I wrote GitGot. I was watching a lot of The Wire at the time, so I was thinking that boy gonna get got. This is a picture of catnip. No, really, it's organic catnip from my farmer's market. So the best way to explain GOT is to not talk to you about it, it's to show it to you. So we're gonna now have the ill-advised live demo #1 portion of my talk.
Question.
Yes.
Is this live?
Is what live? Why am I not? This is why the demo is ill-advised.
It's not on the big screen.
Yeah, I know, because I unplugged it.
Don't do that.
Because I'm trying to find out why my keyboard...
If you unplug it, it's not on the screen anymore.
I know, but it causes the resolution of this screen to become bigger, and then I can see more things. Wow, this is going to go extremely badly now.
Show us more pictures of your hobby.
Can we get some interpretive dance?
My keyboard has quit working? Well, except the problem is that now it worked long enough to get off my presentation, but oh wow, now that's back. Let's try this. No, my keyboard is plugged in.
Did you unplug it?
That was the live demo. If you're interested in seeing a live demo, hit me up later. So what GOT lets you do is it lets you take all your Git repositories and put them in a config file. And there are commands so that you can look at this config file. You can pull out particular sets of repositories from this config file, either by name or by number or by tagging them. And then you can do batch operations. No, Sean, I'm not calling on you. Then you can do batch operations on them. So if you want to do a git pull on all your repositories on your machine, that's a single command. If you want to see the status of all the repositories on your machine, that's a single command. And you can actually give it a flag so that it will only show you the repositories that aren't in a clean state. Okay, so if you frequently bounce between machines, it's easy to leave a commit or two on a box that you committed locally but never pushed. So what I tend to do is about once a week, usually on a Saturday evening, because I don't actually go out of the house because I have 2 kids and hobbies. While I'm indulging in my hobbies, I'll also have my laptop and I'll just be running GOT update everywhere, synchronizing stuff. I have a couple of new patches in it that were contributed by Yannick. One of which is really, really cool. It's called GOT-mux. So if you use tmux, what this lets you do is open up a subshell into the project directory for a Git project. And then if you run that same GOT-mux command later someplace else in that same tmux session, you go back to that same open tmux window. So you can basically have a dedicated window by project and always be able to jump back to it. It's really cool. It's a great idea. I'm really happy he sent it in. Sean, you had a question?
You have this config file. Is that in Git as well?
It is, but I just keep it in a local Git repository, and all the commit messages are like moo. But it is nice to be able to know like what point I checked out a repository onto that machine. I actually use another tool I wrote called app mise en place. All the French people can laugh now. Thank you. This is what I like about Rolski. He sees the straight line coming. This is a symlink manager that works on a per project basis. So you put a .mise file into your project directory, and you run mise, and it gathers all of these up and symlinks stuff like into your bin directory or into your Etsy directory or into your root, because I keep all my Etsy files in /tilde/Etsy, so that I can keep just the shellcon files in one place. And then, for example, .bashrc is actually a symlink to Etsy bashrc. And I manage all that with mise. It lets me keep things that I don't want to turn into full-bore CPAN distributions and publish onto CPAN still easily available, and I only have to have home bin in my path. I don't have to have 27 different project bin directories in my path because everything's symlinked back into my home bin. And mise makes this easier to manage. Both GitGOT and CPAN and mise en place are on CPAN. I would love patches and bug reports and more people to use them because I think they're actually really cool and useful. I also use another command a lot in my shell config. It's a kind of a shell add-on. It's called smartcd. Who uses smartcd? Wow, you guys are missing out. This is on GitHub. It's the user CXREG. He's a Perl guy. What smartcd lets you do is it hooks into the cd command in your shell, and lets you run commands when you change directories. So the way I have it set up is if I cd into a directory that's a Git repository, a whole bunch of aliases get defined. So there's an alias set on up that does git pull, and there's an alias set on st that does git status. If I change out of a Git directory, those aliases go away. And then if I change into an SVN repository, one, it punches me in the face, and two, it sets up a bunch of aliases so that up there does SVN pull, and st does SVN status. So I don't have to remember different commands for interacting with different revision control systems. I have one set of commands, and they're all very short because I do that a lot. Smart CD is what drives that and makes it possible. And the configuration for that is in my Etsy repository on GitHub. I think it's called Smart CD config. I also used to use and really like this tool called Skitch. Who used Skitch? So the nice thing about Skitch was it lets you right-click on an image and then upload it somewhere, and it copied the URL into your clipboard, so then you could just flip over to your company workflow and paste it in, and then people could see the screenshot you just took of the bug they introduced. And it made it a lot easier to yell at people with like documentary evidence. But then Evernote bought them, and they effed it all up. And it's really horrible now, and it doesn't really work like it used to. So I have a replacement. Continuing my trend of writing things and replacing the I's with O's, I wrote Scotch. And what Scotch is an AppleScript wrapper around a command line Perl script that uses Sean Moore's no-paste, so that when you right-click on something, it uploads to your own paste server over SCP. And the code for this is also on GitHub. Again, it works really well, and if you were using Skitch and were disappointed at how badly it got screwed up when Evernote acquired it, I recommend that you check this out too. There's actually the current post on my blog, which is about 4 months old, is also about Scotch and about the development of it. AppleScript is some weird stuff, man. Nobody gets to talk weird stuff about Perl anymore because of AppleScript. I also, because I maintain GitWrapper, and because I'm a hardcore Emacs user, I frequently build those two pieces of software. And I need to be able to build arbitrary versions of those pieces of software because there's a couple of Emacs libraries I maintain too. So if somebody reports a bug against Emacs 21.0406, the first step in reproducing that is to build it. So I built those often enough that I actually wrote scripts to do that. So there's something, I haven't put it on CPAN yet because I don't know that anybody but me would use it. But there is something I wrote called app-get-getter that when you run it, will download and install the most recent version of Git or some arbitrary version you give it. And I have another script called build most recent Emacs. I'm not suggesting that you use these so much as providing them as examples of other things that you could consider automating in your workflow if you support software that uses some external dependency that you have to build frequently. Quit running configure and make install and just write a script to do it. Even though you can probably type configure and make install in less than 15 seconds, it's still much easier to not have to think about it and know that it will go into an organized place. These are set up so that they install into a defined object hierarchy or a defined directory hierarchy. I have everything under opt, and there are version numbers in all the directory names, and then opt-get is symlinked to the active one. Opt-emacs is symlinked to the active one, and these tools maintain that symlink for me. It's not that different than Perlbrew. So this is another tool I wanted to recommend that I did not write. It's on Git. It's called the Silver Searcher. Who uses this? The command line tool is AG. This is basically like ACK, but it's written in C, and it runs about 7 million times faster. Like, you know how you've gotten used to using ACK, and you hit return, and there's that little pause while you wait? AG is exactly like that, only it comes back instantaneously. It's a little bit of trouble to build. I don't know if it's, Sean, do you know if it's packaged in like Linux?
I think it's in Homebrew. I don't know about Linux.
Yeah, I just downloaded the Git repository and built it. It's not that hard. It is, for something that seems like it would not be that big of a deal, it's actually fairly life-changing how much faster it is and how much you didn't notice how slow ACK got. Particularly if you're not a fan of the -A change in ACK 2.0, I recommend you look at this. And then finally, there's another tool I use on the Mac. So again, I said I'm an Emacs person. Emacs uses the command key a lot, and I run Emacs in the terminal a lot, and all the Mac terminals use the command key to do stuff like, I don't know, Mac stuff. Emacs paste is Control W, or Command W. Yeah, that happens a lot. So there's this little thing called Command Key Happy, which again you can get on Git. It runs in the background and basically intercepts key events and rebinds them on a per app basis based on a Lua config that you write, which is, on the one hand, is kind of scary. But on the other hand, it works really well. And so in my terminals, the command key actually sends option. I have the option, the command keys reversed, basically, in my terminals. And then everything works fine, and I don't accidentally close stuff anymore. And my kids don't learn new words from daddy. I'm presenting this again, not because I necessarily think you need to specifically do this, but in terms of considering how much you should be looking at reconfiguring your environment to better suit your workflows. Think about how much pain you endure on a daily basis, that with the investment of 10 or 15 minutes, you'll find somebody out there who also had your pain but had enough spare time to write some code to fix it. And it's probably on GitHub and you can just install it. So Smart CD, Silver Searcher, and Command Key Happy are all things I did not write but use very happily, and I have no higher praise for them than to say that I don't have my own forks of them. I just use the author's repositories to build them. I've never had to fork them, which is great. Finally, in my remaining couple of minutes, I gave a talk last year at YAPC that was about editor automation. If you weren't there, you haven't seen it, I think it's on YouTube. You can watch it. It's only about 7 minutes long because I was drastically under on material. So it won't take that much of your time. But you should really consider fixing your editor and tuning it up. This is probably the biggest productivity boost I have, in that my syntax highlighting is awesome. I have tab autocomplete on everything, and it took a long time to get, but it was totally worth setting it up. So if you haven't configured your editor, consider watching my talk and thinking a little bit about how you use your editor and how you could use it better. Thanks. Everything I talked about is on GitHub or CPAN, except Smart CD, that's on CXGreg's GitHub, and Silver Searcher, which you'll have to search for because I don't remember the author's name because I'm a bad person. I'd love to talk to you about how you've automated yourself and maybe actually give you a demo of GitGot once my computer is not screwed up anymore. So hit me up in the hallway track if you have any questions. Thanks. I'm trying. Yeah, no, I got nothing. Oh, hey, look, there's a terminal. Awesome. Here's God. So I think my talk is over in about 1 minute, but I will continue live demoing as long as people want to. So this is how GOT works. You got ls, and it shows you a list of all the repositories you have on your machine. And you can do GOT a particular one. Oops. You can do GOT and give it a particular repository number. And it'll show you just that one. You can also give ranges, comma separated, which apparently doesn't work, but should. All the commands take these same repository selectors to restrict what they do. You can also do GOT st. So this is actually doing a git status in each one of these repositories and showing me like which ones are dirty, which ones aren't. If I instead do with -v, or not -v, -v makes it noisier. With -q, it only shows the ones that are dirty. And if I go into one of them, which I can do with the awesome git tmux command. So Emacs is number 31, right? If I do got tmux 31, and I'm running tmux, I'm going to get a new window popped open down here that you can't see because it's all the way at the bottom of the screen. But a new window popped up and it's named Emacs, which is the name of the the git got key for it. If I run that same command again, it doesn't open a new window, and it's back in the existing window. That's freaking awesome. Yannick is a genius. So if I look at what I've actually got outstanding here, and now I go back and look. Now it tells me I'm ahead by one because I didn't actually push that. So I'm not okay, I'm ahead by one. That's actually really important. If you work on multiple machines at the same time, that can really save your bacon. I'm not going to go through the trouble of causing something to be out of date or out of sync on my local machine, but it will also tell you if you're behind. It's just running get status in the active repository by CDing into it basically and running get status. So if you have a branch checked out and that branch doesn't have a remote, it tells you that it's an error because there's no remote for that branch. There's some other couple issues like that. Mies works like this. I already have everything set up, but all of this stuff gets symlinked out of project directories into my bin. The Mies config file. So this is the global Mies config file. And what it says is, I want you to look in these directories for other .mies files. And I want you to create and make sure that these directories always exist in that home directory and symlink these things up. So I run Max, which unfortunately means I have to have a capital D desktop directory in my home directory or it screws up. I also like to have a temp directory. And so I have things set up so that they're actually the same, which is good for keeping temp clean because if you put something in temp, it ends up on your desktop and then you delete it. It's awesome. The per project Mies files look like this. It's the same syntax. It's just saying create links of all these things into all of these places. There are a couple of keywords. So let's look at project Max Mies. So bin in all caps means your home directory is bin. It's annoying to have to respell everything out in the symlink, so it just does bin. So let's look at how SmartCD works. Oh, right. So I found out last night when I was practicing this, which I did practice, and the live demo worked awesome then. There's something screwed up in my ZSH that's making SmartCD not work right. But if I look now that I'm running bash where it works right, I only have 2 aliases for get. If I cd into Etsy now I have all this other stuff, right, set up, including L for log and pull and push and st does get status. Now I go back up and do that again, and now I'm back down to the 2 git commands again. If I go into this fake SVN repository that I had to set up specifically for this doc, and I look, whoops, oh right, stupid SVN. Now I have a subset of the same repository aliases. SVN doesn't have as many capabilities, but ST here still does SVN status. L doesn't do SVN log because it turns out I don't actually use SVN anymore. But if I look again, now they're all gone. Yeah, that's it tells you whether the last command was an error or not. That's another thing that you can really customize the hell out of is your shell config. That can turn into a rat hole and is maybe not worth the effort. But for example, if I go into, oops. Oh, let's make this smaller. So I have little things over here that tell me what's going on with my Git repository. I'm on the master branch. Everything is fine. I'm out of sync with the remote. If I push that, now I'm back in sync. The little arrow goes away.
You did that with your bash RC?
That's actually, this is actually ZSH. That's why it has this stuff on the right-hand side. That's a Z shell thing. If you're running bash, just upgrade to Z shell. Do yourself a favor. I was not a Z Shell hipster. I came to Z Shell very late, but basically a couple hours on a weekend afternoon, and it's pretty easy. Just use OMyZSH, even though the hardcore Z Shell people hate that. Just use it. It works. It's good.
RCD probably doesn't work because you have a handler set for CHPWD that's outputting something to send it out.
I think actually the reason why it doesn't work, the specific bug is that it doesn't remove the aliases, and I think the reason why it doesn't remove them is because I'm setting them inside the theme file that sets up my command line, because that seemed like a good idea at the time, and I think that's not where I should be doing it. But I don't know. It doesn't, yeah, it's one of those things. Did anybody want to see anything else that I talked about demoed?
Scotch.
Right.
Rewrite scanner.
I don't know that that's going to work, because things are messed up. Let's get the Finder back. Yay! Okay, so if I take one of these pictures, like this one that I didn't use, and I can do open with Scotch. And now I can go to Thanks, Sean. Yeah, this Evernote. I've recreated the Evernote experience. So what should have happened is you should have seen the file here. What probably happened is my remote server deny host keeps aggressively blocking my SSH connections from here because of the way the Wi-Fi works. I think I have something that's trying to reconnect and it hitting the authentication dialog, and then eventually I end up in the denied file. So I need to unblock that again. But you should have seen a lovely picture here that would have looked much like this. Imagine that, but in a web browser. And that's what I'm doing right now, because what the was I thinking with the live demo?
Maybe you use the happy phone.